So, although I haven't been in Randonneering for that long, my role in my local club has changed quite substantially. So instead of, look at all the deer. So instead of, just getting out there to ride and have lots of fun, my role has changed to actually promoting the sport of Randonneering, as well as encouraging new riders to participate. But while I've started to see all these new guys ride these long distance brevets, I started to feel a sense of responsibility in that I really think, their safety is now paramount, and that's why I've decided to embark upon this series of videos with regards safety in Randonneering. And so I think it's only right that we actually start to give back to the Randonneering community by helping to create some educational resource with regards safety. I've asked my friends Fred Shannon from Ontario and Josh Haley from Ohio to talk about some of the aspects of safety with regards environmental hazards. And as you can see, we're supposed to be out there riding our brevet in 2 weeks' time. I don't know if we're actually going to do that because we've still got so much snow and it's still snowing. So I don't know how practical it is going to be for us to actually get out there and actually ride. We are required to follow fairly strict safe event guidelines with regards to environmental conditions in Saskatchewan to maintain our liability insurance. Following these guidelines are challenging given the length of our randonneering events, which may occasionally extend over more than 3 days, and the difficulty in predicting or anticipating how environmental conditions may change in that time. So while we follow these guidelines as a club, the responsibility really rests on the individual participant to recognize the environmental hazards and respond appropriately and responsibly. With regards temperature extremes, recreational cycling activities should be cancelled if the temperatures are either colder than minus 30 degrees Celsius or hotter than 40 degrees Celsius.
No, so 39 is about 102 Fahrenheit. I only know that because one time I was in Phoenix, Arizona, when it was about 50 degrees Celsius. It was like 122 Fahrenheit. So I got familiar with the scale a little bit. We don't have a policy about stopping our rides when it's too hot, although like that's not a club-wide policy. But this is exactly the time where people start to make that decision, right? Everything changes when it gets that hot. The amount of water that you need, like you can't drink enough usually on these long rides. We don't have controls every 10 kilometers for you to fill up water, right? You're losing sweat and salt at a rate that you can't replenish fast enough. So it really does become a question of safety when it's beyond, 40 degrees Celsius or 102 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, I mean that's hitting a point where it's just dangerous. And even before that point, I think it's still worth considering, like individually as a rider, understanding how you react to the heat. So when I lived in Florida, I did a couple of 200 Ks where it wasn't 102, but it was 98 degrees and 90% humidity outside, and I was completely used to it. And honestly, in a 30-mile section, I would have like about 4 or 5 grams of salt and close to a gallon of water. And if I had just drank the water, I probably would have ended up seizing on the side of the road from not having the salt.
You're
And
cramped.
yeah, no, not even cramped. I think honestly, you'd hit a hyponatremia situation, and that was when I was used to riding in the heat, right? So like that, if I were to do that again today, I would physically break down before I hit that point, just because I'm not adapted. You're used to what you're riding, and I think that is also a little dangerous and worth considering if you're traveling for an event. So this past November, I went from 30-degree Ohio to 85-degree Florida to ride a 200K or a 1200K. And that first day was really rough. Like it was really on the edge of what I could tolerate, and I really, really had to slow down because I'm just not adapted to that heat anymore. And especially if once again you're traveling from someplace cooler that's hotter, understanding how to deal with heat, and then also just kind of understanding the fact that you're not currently used to it are really, really valuable. You're gonna have to slow down.
We had a lot of riders in our club who were at PBP in 2023, and a couple didn't finish specifically because of the heat. I wasn't there. Reagan, I think you were there. How hot did it get in at PBP in 2023?
Yeah, I hit the point where like I was just slowing down, getting slower and slower, and then it was so hot I couldn't eat anything solid, which for me that's kind of like a death keel to my motivation and energy.
That's the way
And
I do this.
I just kept like struggling until the heat broke, and then I literally pulled into a control, ate a whole pizza, like a legit whole pizza, and felt great and rode through the night because it was cooler. And I do know riders who do the whole siesta thing, take your nap on the hottest part of the day, not when it's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, I would. That's how I would
Um,
do it.
well, it felt like a cruel joke because in 2019 I lived in Florida and then froze at PBP. 2023 I lived in Ohio and then
Overheated.
very edgy, yeah, overheated at PBP.
The snow is not letting up at all, and I hope that you've learned something from what Fred and Josh have said about temperatures. But I think one thing that we encounter a lot in the prairies is extreme wind, and our local guidelines say that if the wind is above 40 kilometers per hour, we really shouldn't be having any kind of cycling events. So I wanted to ask them what do they think about wind speed and how do they manage with that in their
We
events.
don't have a policy on wind. It is something that people will watch. My question is, there's two kinds of wind speeds though. Um, there's the sustained wind speed, and then there's the gust wind speed, right? So often you'll see wind presented in two forms, right? How fast is the wind? Kind of like 39 kilometer an hour wind. If that's sustained, I mean that's the kind of headwind that you're going to be putting out like 250 watts and going 15 kilometers an hour. Um, but if it's gusty, then you just need what you need to be careful of is you're going to be riding along, and then all of a sudden you're just gonna your bike's gonna change a lane on you, right? So there's different kinds of safety there, right? One is purely exhausting, and the other one is unsafe, right? So it's the gusts that I would worry about from a safety point of view. The sustained wind speed, I think, has more of an effect on just your overall durability, which again, getting back to comfort equals safety, can make you uncomfortable and therefore less safe.
Yeah, I agree. It's the gusts because they're unpredictable. It makes it so you have to be much more mentally alert, and you're going to white knuckle the handlebars quite a bit more as you're fighting the bike in the wind.
Another common environmental hazard that we encounter on the prairies is lightning. We don't often see that in winter, but in summer, yes, we get lots of those prairie storms. And the usual policy here is that if you see lightning and you can hear thunder, and the interval between the two is less than 30 seconds, which indicates a distance of about 10 kilometers away from the lightning strike itself, that you should probably stop cycling also. So I asked Fred and Josh, how do they manage with lightning when they are on their randoneering events?
Lightning off in the distance is not as much a concern. It happens a lot in the summer. We just get heat lightning, but lightning combined with thunder, right? Once you hear thunder, now you know that it's proximate, and when you know that it's close, you should just be seeking shelter. These things move, so it's just something that you just need to wait out.
Yep, I mean that can be rough if you are near the edge of a time limit. Thankfully, I've never been in that situation. I have had to accept the fact that hey, my 19-hour 400K is about to become a 24-hour ride because it's just
Yeah.
not enjoyable to be in hail and lightning. And there was a restaurant, so I stopped and had like the longest lunch I've ever had on a brevet until the storm passed through. Because to Fred's point, these storms tend to move pretty quick, so you can kind of sip some coffee, watch the radar on your phone. If you're particularly unlucky, sometimes you'll sit under the stoop of a church and just kind of watch the world pass by.
It's with this kind of weather, it's pretty hard to think about tornadoes, but we experienced one tornado-like kind of event when we were riding the Cooley Challenge back in 2022. We could see some really crazy funnel clouds in the distance and crazy winds and rain, and the organizers at that time told us to just try and shelter in place and find a place that's safe with a bit of an overhang and just sit tight. Usually they say that it's most likely going to pass over us, and as long as we were in a safe place, we could hopefully get on with our ride once it had passed. I asked Josh and Fred what did they do when it comes to experiencing a tornado.
Not in my neck of the woods, but in the southwestern side of the state, they've been known to happen. We've had to reroute some rides, not due to tornadoes during the ride, but tornadoes going through where we were going to ride, like the week before. Thankfully, I have not been in this situation because it would absolutely terrify me. But yeah, that's a situation of get inside if you can, and if you can't, get in a ditch and
You
pull
get
the
in a
bike
ditch.
over you.
Yeah.
Make peace with whatever deity that you happen to be affiliated with, and hope the storm passes quickly. Like I said, have not been in this situation. Really don't want to be in this situation.
A couple of years ago, we got hit in the back with that Dureco system that came through Southern Ontario. So Dureco is like a wind system that's basically a straight line that just wipes across. So it was essentially the best tailwind I've ever had. Probably like 80, 90 kilometers an hour. I mean, I was not pedaling my bike and going about 30 kilometers an hour on it. And that was just because we just had to, I was with two others. We just had to find a place to pull off again. Cars had already stopped, but there was no ditch right on this particular road. So we just sort of let the wind push us down the road until we found a house with a porch and waited it out.
One of the big challenges that I found is that when you are riding a randonneering event, it's really hard to predict what kind of weather you're going to encounter. And as an organizer, we always try to make sure that when we organize an event, that the conditions are as safe as possible for the riders. But one of the things we can't control is the weather, and so I think if you as a randonneer start a randonneering event and it seems to be safe conditions, but things change as you go along, you need to have some kind of plan as to how you're going to cope with those changing conditions. And I hope that this video has given you some insight as to what to do if you have extreme temperatures, if you have strong winds, if you see lightning, as well as if you encounter any tornado-like events. In the next video, we're going to talk about poor light conditions or low visibility conditions, personal reflective clothing, as well as lights. I'm actually hoping that by the time I actually am able to upload that video, we'll actually be riding outside, but you just never know. Please, until I see you again, please ride safely, stay warm. Cheers, bye.